The French Quarter of New Orleans pulsed with life on a sultry summer evening, its narrow streets alive with the hum of conversation, the clink of glasses, and the distant trumpet wail. In a dimly lit bar called the Rusty Note, tucked away on a cobblestone alley, Aaliyah Jones stood on a small stage, her voice weaving through the air like a warm breeze. Her rich, soulful jazz filled the room, each note carrying the weight of her dreams and struggles. Aaliyah, a Black American woman in her late 20s, had eyes that sparkled with resilience and a smile that could light up the darkest corners of the quarter. Her dark curls framed her face as she sang, her hands moving gracefully to the piano rhythm behind her. The crowd, a mix of locals and tourists, leaned in captivated by her presence. Aaliyah was no stranger to hardship. Raised in the lower Ninth Ward, she'd grown up with little more than her mother's love and a second-hand radio that played Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald. Now a single mother to her 6-year-old daughter Amara, she poured her heart into her music, hoping it would someday carry them to a better life. The Rusty Note wasn't glamorous with its peeling paint and creaky floorboards, but it was her sanctuary, a place where she could be herself. On this particular night, the door swung open, and Nathaniel Brooks stepped inside. A white American man in his mid-30s, Nathaniel was the epitome of polished success. His tailored navy suit and confident stride marked him as someone who belonged in boardrooms, not dive bars. As the owner of the Crescent Moon hotel chain, he was a fixture in New Orleans' elite circles, yet his heart belonged to the city's soul, its jazz, its Creole culture, its vibrant chaos. He'd come to the quarter that evening on a whim, drawn by a need to escape his world's sterile meetings and endless emails. As Aaliyah's voice hit a soaring note in summertime, Nathaniel froze, his breath catching, like the Mississippi River. Her voice was raw, powerful, and haunting. He found a seat near the back, his eyes fixed on her. She wore a simple burgundy dress that hugged her curves, and her movements were effortless, as if the music flowed through her veins. The room applauded when the song ended, but Nathaniel barely noticed. He was already imagining her on a grander stage worthy of her talent. After the set, Aaliyah stepped off the stage, wiping sweat from her brow and exchanging a quick word with the pianist. Nathaniel approached, his heart pounding like it hadn't in years. "That was incredible," he said, his voice warm and genuine. "I'm Nathaniel Brooks. I own the Crescent Moon Hotel. I'd love for you to perform there." Aaliyah's eyes widened, a mix of surprise and skepticism flickering across her face. She'd heard promises before, promoters who saw her as a ticket to quick cash men who thought charm could buy more than her music. But Nathaniel's gaze was different, steady and respectful. "Thank you," she said cautiously, "but I'm not sure I'm what your fancy hotel is looking for." Nathaniel smiled, undeterred. "My hotel needs soul, and you've got that in spades. Please consider it. I'll have my team reach out with details." He handed her a business card, his fingers brushing hers for a fleeting moment. Aaliyah nodded, tucking the card into her pocket, her mind racing. The Crescent Moon was a world away from the Rusty Note, a glittering beacon of luxury she'd only seen from the outside. Could she belong there? And why did this man with his polished demeanor and intense blue eyes make her feel like she could? As Nathaniel left the bar, the humid night air hit him like a wave, but he barely noticed. Aaliyah's voice lingered in his mind, a melody he couldn't shake. For Aaliyah, the encounter left her restless. She walked home to her small apartment where Amara slept soundly, clutching a stuffed alligator. Staring at Nathaniel's card, Aaliyah felt a spark of hope and fear. She'd learned long ago that dreams came with a price, and she wasn't sure she could afford it. The next day, Aaliyah's phone buzzed with a call from Nathaniel's assistant, a brisk woman named Clara, who outlined the offer: a 3-night engagement at the Crescent Moon's Jazz Lounge with a generous fee and professional backing band. Aaliyah hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of Amara's drawing on the kitchen table. The money could pay for Amara's school supplies, maybe even a new pair of shoes. But stepping into Nathaniel's world meant risking exposure judgment and the vulnerability she'd spent years shielding. She called her best friend Maya, who worked as a waitress at the Rusty Note. "Girl, you're crazy if you don't take this," Maya said, her voice crackling through the phone. "This could be your big break. And that Nathaniel guy. If you know what I mean, he didn't look at you like a singer." Aaliyah laughed, but her stomach twisted. She wasn't blind. Nathaniel was handsome with his sandy hair and easy confidence, but she couldn't afford to think about that. Her life was about Amara, her music, and survival. Still, something about Nathaniel's offer felt different, like a door opening to a place she'd never dared to go. She agreed to the gig, and a week later, she stood backstage at the Crescent Moon's Jazz Lounge, her heart pounding. The room was far from the Rusty Note, with its crystal chandeliers, velvet curtains, and tables filled with well-dressed patrons sipping cocktails. Aaliyah adjusted her emerald green gown, a thrift store find she'd altered, and took a deep breath. The band struck up the opening notes of My Funny Valentine, and she stepped into the spotlight. Nathaniel watched from a private booth, his pulse quickening, as Aaliyah's voice filled the room. She was even more captivating here, her presence commanding the space without effort. The audience was spellbound, and Nathaniel felt a surge of pride, as if her triumph was his own. When the set ended, he found her backstage, her face flushed with adrenaline. "You were phenomenal," he said, his voice low. "This stage was made for you." Aaliyah smiled, but her eyes were guarded. "Thank you, Mr. Brooks. I appreciate the opportunity. Call me Nathaniel," he said, stepping closer. "And I hope this is just the beginning." As they talked, Aaliyah felt a warmth she hadn't expected. Nathaniel's passion for jazz was genuine, his stories of sneaking into clubs as a teenager, echoing her love for the music. For a moment, she forgot the gap between their worlds. But as she left the hotel, the weight of reality settled back in. She was a single mother from the 9th Ward, and he was a billionaire who could have anything or anyone he wanted. What was she doing letting herself dream? The success of Aaliyah's first performance at the Crescent Moon spread quickly, and Nathaniel insisted on booking her for a whole month. She transformed the lounge into a haven of soulful melodies, each night drawing larger crowds and glowing reviews. Nathaniel was there for every show, sometimes in the audience, sometimes watching from the wings. His presence was impossible to ignore, and Aaliyah found herself looking for him, her heart skipping when she caught his smile. Nathaniel began seeking her out between sets, offering small gestures that chipped away at her defenses. One night, he brought her a cup of chamomile tea when she mentioned her throat was sore. Another time, he shared a story about his grandmother, a Creole woman who taught him to cook gumbo and love jazz. Aaliyah also opened up, telling him about Amara's obsession with drawing and her childhood dreams of singing at Preservation Hall. One evening, after a particularly electric performance, Nathaniel caught Aaliyah as she stepped off stage. "Walk with me," he said, his voice soft but insistent, just for a bit. Against her better judgment, Aaliyah agreed. They strolled along the Mississippi River, the moon casting a silver glow over the water. The air was thick with the scent of magnolias and the distant hum of a street performer's saxophone. Nathaniel walked beside her, his hands in his pockets, his usual confidence softened by the night. He said, "I've been to jazz clubs worldwide, but I've never heard anyone like you. It's like you sing from a place most people can't find." Aaliyah's cheeks warmed, but she kept her eyes on the river. "I sing what I feel," she said. "It's all I've got." "That's more than enough," Nathaniel replied. He stopped walking, turning to face her. "Aaliyah, we come from different worlds, but I feel something around you. something real. Her breath caught. She wanted to believe him, to let herself fall into the possibility of his words, but fear held her back. "Nathaniel, you don't know me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not really. I've got a past, a daughter, a life that doesn't fit your world." He said, "My world's not as perfect as you think," his eyes searching hers. "I've built hotels and made money, but I've been lonely, Aaliyah, until I heard you sing." The honesty in his voice disarmed her. She looked at him, really looked, and saw not the billionaire, but a man who loved the same music, the same city, the same dreams. Without thinking, she reached for his hand, her fingers brushing his. The touch sent a jolt through her, and she pulled back, startled by her boldness. Nathaniel smiled, sensing her hesitation. "No pressure," he said. "Just let me be around you. Let me show you I'm serious." They walked back in comfortable silence, the river's gentle lapping a backdrop to their thoughts. Aaliyah's mind was a storm of hope and doubt. She wanted to trust Nathaniel, but years of disappointment had taught her to guard her heart. Still, as they parted ways at the hotel, he pressed a small gift into her hand, a vintage jazz record by Nina Simone. "For you and Amara," he said. "I think she'd like it." Aaliyah played the record at home, and Nina's voice filled the tiny apartment. Amara danced around the living room, giggling, and Aaliyah felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years, possibility. But in her mind, a voice whispered that this was too good to be true. Meanwhile, at the Crescent Moon, Derek, the hotel's ambitious manager, watched Nathaniel and Aaliyah's growing connection with a scowl. A tall, wiry man with a knack for manipulation, Derek had spent years clawing his way up the corporate ladder, only to be overshadowed by Nathaniel's charm and success. He saw Aaliyah as a threat, a distraction that could weaken Nathaniel's focus and give Derek a chance to seize control. Late that night, he sat in his office digging through old records and social media, searching for anything he could use against her. Aaliyah arrived at the hotel the following evening to find whispers among the staff. A few cast sidelong glances, their smiles tight. She brushed it off, focusing on her performance, but the unease lingered. After her set, Nathaniel found her backstage, his face clouded with concern. "I heard something today. He said rumors about you, about your past. I don't believe them, but I need you to know I'm on your side." Aaliyah's stomach dropped. She'd known this moment would come, when her past would catch up to her. "What did they say?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear. "Just gossip." Nathaniel said, his jaw tight. "Something about you using me to get famous." "It's nonsense, Aaliyah. I know you." She wanted to tell him everything about the poverty, the mistakes, the struggle, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she nodded, forcing a smile. "Thank you," she said. "I need some time." As she left the hotel, Aaliyah felt the weight of those whispers pressing down on her. She didn't know who was behind them, but she knew one thing: Nathaniel's world was a minefield, and she wasn't sure she could navigate it without losing herself. The Mississippi River shimmered under the late August moon, its surface catching the lights of New Orleans like scattered diamonds. Aaliyah Jones walked along the levee, her heels clicking softly on the pavement, her mind tangled with emotions. The past week had been a whirlwind. Her performances at the Crescent Moon Hotel had elevated her from a local secret to a rising star in the city's jazz scene. Each night she stepped onto the stage, her voice weaving stories of love and loss, and each night Nathaniel Brooks was there, his presence a quiet anchor in the storm of her doubts. Aaliyah, a Black American woman with a voice that could break hearts, had never imagined herself in a place like the Crescent Moon. The lounge, with its polished mahogany bar and crystal chandeliers, was a world apart from the gritty charm of the Rusty Note, where she'd honed her craft. Yet here she was, commanding standing ovations from audiences, who sipped martinis and wore designer suits. It was exhilarating, but it also terrified her. She was a single mother from the lower Ninth Ward, raising her 6-year-old daughter Amara in a cramped apartment with peeling wallpaper. Nathaniel, a white American billionaire with sandy hair and piercing blue eyes, belonged to a world of privilege she could barely fathom. His attention and admiration felt like a dream she didn't trust herself to hold on to. Tonight's performance had been her best yet. She'd sung Ain't Misbehavin' with a playful lilt, her eyes locking with Nathaniel's for a fleeting moment as the crowd roared. Afterward, he'd found her backstage, his smile warm and unguarded. "You're changing this place, Aaliyah," he'd said, his voice low. "You're making it alive." The words had sent a shiver through her, but they also stirred the fear that had been growing since the whispers started. Rumors that she was using Nathaniel to climb the social ladder, that she didn't belong in his glittering world. As she walked along the river, Nathaniel caught up with her, his footsteps steady and purposeful. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, stepping beside her. He'd shed his suit jacket, his white shirt rolled up at the sleeves, revealing tanned forearms. The casualness made him seem less like a tycoon and more like the man who'd told her stories of sneaking into jazz clubs as a teenager. Aaliyah hesitated, her fingers tightening around the strap of her bag. "It's late, Nathaniel. I should get home to Amara." "Just a few minutes," he said, his tone gentle but insistent. "I meant what I said earlier. You're not just a performer to me, Aaliyah. You're different." She stopped walking, turning to face him. The river lapped quietly behind them, and the distant wail of a saxophone carried on the breeze. "Different?" she asked, her voice sharper than she intended. "Because I'm not like the people you know. Because I'm from the Ninth Ward, scraping by raising a kid alone." Nathaniel's brow furrowed, but he didn't look away. "No," he said firmly. "Because you're real. You sing like you've lived every word and make me feel things I haven't felt in years. I don't care where you're from, Aaliyah. I care about you." Her heart pounded, torn between hope and skepticism. She wanted to believe him, to let herself fall into the warmth of his words, but the rumors gnawed at her. She'd overheard a waitress at the hotel whispering about that singer who's got Nathaniel wrapped around her finger. The words had stung, reminding her of the gap between their worlds. "You say that now," she said, her voice softer, "but you don't know what it's like to be judged for who you are, where you come from. Those rumors, they're not just gossip, they're warnings." Nathaniel stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "I heard them too," he admitted, "and I don't care. Let them talk. I know who you are, Aaliyah, and I'm not going anywhere." For a moment, she let herself believe him. She noticed how his hair caught the moonlight, his voice's sincerity, and his presence made her feel safe and seen. Without thinking, she reached out, her fingers brushing his. The touch was electric, and she didn't pull away this time. Nathaniel's hand closed gently around hers, warm and steady, and they stood there, the river flowing beside them, the city humming in the distance. They walked for nearly an hour, talking about everything and nothing. Jazz legends, their favorite New Orleans haunts, the way the city seemed to breathe music. Nathaniel told her about his Creole grandmother, who'd taught him to love the soul of the town, and Aaliyah shared stories of Amara's latest obsession with drawing mermaids. For the first time, Aaliyah felt like she could be herself with him, not the singer or the single mom, but just Aaliyah. Nathaniel pressed a small wrapped package into her hand when they parted ways. "For Amara," he said with a grin, "and maybe for you too." Inside was a children's book about New Orleans jazz, with colorful illustrations of musicians and street parades. Aaliyah's throat tightened. It was the gift that showed he'd been listening, that he understood what mattered to her. She tucked Amara in at home, the book resting on the nightstand. As she watched her daughter sleep, Aaliyah felt a flicker of hope. Maybe Nathaniel was different. But as she drifted off, the whispers of doubt lingered, warning her that dreams like this rarely came without a cost. The next few nights at the Crescent Moon were a blur of music and connection. Aaliyah's performances grew bolder, her voice carrying a new confidence. Nathaniel was always there, sometimes bringing Amara small gifts, a beaded bracelet, a tiny harmonica, and each gesture chipped away at Aaliyah's defenses. But the rumors persisted, growing louder. One night, she overheard a group of patrons speculating about her motives, their words laced with condescension. "She's good," but clearly after his money, one woman said, her voice dripping with disdain. Aaliyah tried to focus on her music, but the weight of judgment was suffocating. She began to notice subtle changes. Staff members who once smiled now avoided her eyes. Invitations to exclusive events that never came. She confided in Maya, her best friend, over coffee at a diner near the Rusty Note. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," Aaliyah said, stirring her coffee absently. "I'm on trial every time I step into that hotel." Maya leaned forward, her eyes fierce. "You listen to me, Aaliyah. You're not just some girl from the 9th Ward. You're a star, and they're scared of that. Nathaniel sees it, and that's what matters. Don't let them take this from you." Aaliyah nodded, but the doubt lingered. That night, as she sang "I've Got a Crush on You," she saw Nathaniel in the crowd. His smile was steady, unwavering, and for a moment she believed she could do this. But as the applause faded, she caught a glimpse of Derek, the hotel's manager, watching from the shadows, his expression cold and calculating. Unbeknownst to Aaliyah, Derek was weaving a web of deceit. He'd spent weeks digging into her past, piecing together fragments of her life, her childhood in poverty, a brief run-in with the law as a teenager, when she'd taken food from a corner store to feed her family. He saw her as a threat to Nathaniel's empire, a distraction that could destabilize the man he envied. Derek wanted Nathaniel's position and power, and would do whatever it took. He began feeding tidbits to the press, anonymous tips that painted Aaliyah as a gold digger with a shady past. As Aaliyah left the hotel that night, Nathaniel caught her arm. "You were incredible," he said, his voice warm. "But you seem off. What's wrong?" She hesitated, the weight of the rumors pressing down. "It's nothing," she lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired." Nathaniel's eyes narrowed, but he didn't push. "Get some rest," he said. "And Aaliyah, I'm here, always." She nodded, but the city's vibrant pulse felt muted as she walked home. She was falling for Nathaniel, and it scared her. She wasn't just risking her heart, but Amara's too. And with every step, she felt the shadow of doubt growing larger, threatening to swallow the fragile hope she'd begun to nurture. The Crescent Moon's jazz lounge was packed, the air thick with anticipation, as Aaliyah took the stage. Her performances had become the talk of New Orleans, drawing crowds from across the city and beyond. Tonight, she wore a sapphire blue dress that shimmered under the lights, her voice soaring through blue skies, with a clarity that silenced the room. Nathaniel sat in his usual booth, his eyes fixed on her, a quiet pride in his expression. But Aaliyah could feel the weight of unseen eyes, the whispers that followed her like a persistent shadow. Derek's campaign against her was gaining traction. With his sharp suits and sharper ambition, the manager had spent weeks planting seeds of doubt. He'd leaked details of Aaliyah's past to a local gossip columnist, who'd spun them into a damning narrative, the poor girl from the wrong side of town, using her charm to ensnare a billionaire. The article hadn't named her outright, but the hints were clear enough, and the whispers among the hotel staff grew louder. Aaliyah noticed the change servers who once chatted with her now kept their distance, and even some of the band members seemed wary, their smiles tight and forced. After her set, Aaliyah retreated to the green room, her hands trembling as she sipped water. Nathaniel found her there, his face etched with concern. "You were fantastic tonight," he said, sitting beside her. "But something's wrong. I can see it." Aaliyah's throat tightened. She wanted to tell him everything. The rumors, the judgment, the fear that she was dragging him into a scandal, but the words wouldn't come. "It's just nerves," she said, avoiding his gaze. "I'm not used to all this." Nathaniel reached for her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "Aaliyah, I know about the gossip. I've heard it too. It's nonsense, and I won't let it come between us." Her eyes met his, and for a moment she felt safe. But the moment was fleeting. As she left the hotel, she saw Derek speaking hushedly to a man with a notebook in the lobby. Her stomach churned. She knew that look: scheming, calculating, dangerous. The next morning, Aaliyah woke to a text from Maya. "Check the news. Call me." Her heart sank as she opened her phone to find a headline in the local paper: "Mystery Singer at Crescent Moon Talent," or "Opportunist." The article was vicious, painting her as a manipulative climber with a troubled past. It mentioned her teenage brush with the law, framing it as evidence of her untrustworthiness. Aaliyah's hands shook as she read, her vision blurring with tears. Amara was at school, thank God, but the thought of her daughter hearing these lies made Aaliyah's chest ache. She called Maya, her voice breaking. "They're tearing me apart, Maya. I can't do this. I can't let this touch Amara." "You listen to me," Maya said, her voice fierce. "You're not the girl in that article. You're Aaliyah Jones, and you fought for everything you have. Don't let them take this from you. Nathaniel's on your side, isn't he?" Aaliyah nodded, though Maya couldn't see. "He says he is. But what if this hurts him too? His business, his reputation. Then he's got to decide what you're worth," Maya said. "And from what I've seen, he's not the type to back down." Aaliyah hung up, her mind racing. She wanted to believe in Nathaniel, in the connection they'd built, but the article had shaken her. She canceled her rehearsal that day, claiming a sore throat, and spent the afternoon with Amara, helping her color a picture of a jazz band. Amara's laughter was a balm, but it couldn't erase the fear that her past was catching up. At the Crescent Moon, Nathaniel was furious. He'd seen the article and immediately called his PR team, demanding they trace its source. Clara, his assistant, confirmed what he suspected: Derek had been seen with the columnist, feeding him information. Nathaniel confronted Derek in his office, his voice low and dangerous. "What the hell are you playing at, Derek?" Derek feigned innocence, his smile slick. "I'm just looking out for the hotel, Nathaniel. People are talking. You don't want a scandal tainting the Crescent Moon. This isn't about the hotel." Nathaniel snapped. "This is about you wanting my job. Stay away from Aaliyah, or you're done here." Derek's eyes narrowed, but he nodded, retreating. Nathaniel knew it wasn't over. Derek was too ambitious and cunning, but he had bigger concerns. He needed to find Aaliyah to make sure she was okay. He drove to her apartment, a modest building, in a neighborhood far from the glitz of the French Quarter. When Aaliyah opened the door, her eyes were red, her expression guarded. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I saw the article," Nathaniel said, stepping inside. Amara was in the living room, engrossed in her drawing, and Nathaniel lowered his voice. "I know who's behind it. I'm handling it, Aaliyah. I promise." She shook her head, her voice trembling. "You can't handle this, Nathaniel. This is my life, my past being dragged out for everyone to judge. I can't keep performing not with this hanging over me." Nathaniel took her hands, his grip firm. "You're not alone in this. I'm with you, Aaliyah. And I'm not letting some petty gossip ruin what we have." She pulled away, her eyes flashing. "What do we have, Nathaniel?" "A few walks, a few nice words. You live in a world where this doesn't touch you. I don't. Her words stung, but Nathaniel didn't back down. I'm not going anywhere, he said. And neither are you. You're too suitable for that stage to lose you now. Aaliyah wanted to argue, to push him away, but his certainty anchored her. She let him stay, and they sat with Amara talking about her drawings and the music she loved. The world outside faded for a moment, and it was just the three of them, a fragile bubble of warmth in the chaos. But Derek wasn't finished. That night he met with another contact, a blogger with a penchant for scandal. Dig deeper, he told her, slipping her a folder with more details about Aaliyah's past. Nothing criminal, but enough to twist into a narrative of deceit. Make it big. As Aaliyah prepared for her next performance, she felt the weight of the city's eyes on her. She didn't know how much worse it would get, or how far Derek was willing to go. But as she stepped onto the stage, her voice rising in stormy weather, she poured her pain into the music, determined to hold on to the one thing: no one could take her song. The air in the Crescent Moon's jazz lounge was thick with anticipation, the crowd buzzing as Aaliyah Jones stepped onto the stage. Her sapphire dress caught the light, and her presence commanded the room. But beneath her poised exterior, a storm was brewing. Aaliyah, a Black American woman whose voice had become the heartbeat of New Orleans nightlife, was fighting a battle she couldn't name. The whispers about her past, her childhood in the lower Ninth Ward, her struggles as a single mother to 6-year-old Amara, had grown into a vicious article that painted her as a gold digger, preying on Nathaniel Brooks, the white American billionaire who owned the hotel. Each note she sang tonight felt like defiance, a refusal to let the rumors silence her. Aaliyah's rendition of Stormy Weather was raw, her voice trembling with emotion as she poured her pain into the lyrics. The audience was spellbound, but she barely noticed. Her eyes flicked to Nathaniel, who sat in his usual booth, his expression mixed with admiration and worry. He'd promised to stand by her to fight the gossip that threatened to tear them apart, but Aaliyah couldn't shake the fear that her presence in his world was a liability. She was a woman from the margins, and the elite circles Nathaniel moved in quickly reminded her of that. After the set, Aaliyah retreated to the green room, her hands shaking as she sipped water. The weight of the article published just days ago pressed down on her. It had dredged up her teenage mistake, a desperate act of stealing food to feed her family, and twisted it into proof of her unworthiness. She'd canceled rehearsals to avoid the prying eyes of the hotel staff, but performing was her lifeline, the one place where she could still feel whole. Yet even that felt precarious now. Nathaniel found her backstage, his presence a quiet comfort. "You were incredible," he said, his voice low and steady. "But I can tell it's eating at you. Talk to me, Aaliyah." She looked at him, her dark eyes searching his face. With his sandy hair and earnest blue eyes, Nathaniel seemed so sure of himself, so untouched by the judgment that clung to her like damp air. "It's not just the article," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's what it means. People look at me now, and they see a fraud. They see someone who doesn't belong here with you." Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "They're wrong," he said, stepping closer. "I know who you are, Aaliyah. You're the strongest person I've ever met. You've built a life for you and Amara out of nothing, and you sing like you're carrying the soul of this city. No one can take that from you." His words were a lifeline, but Aaliyah's fear ran deeper. She thought of Amara asleep in their small apartment, unaware of the storm brewing around her mother. "It's not just about me," she said. "If this gets worse, it could hurt Amara. I can't let that happen." Nathaniel reached for her hand, his touch warm and grounding. "I won't let it," he promised. "I'm dealing with the source of this. I know it's Derek, and I'm building a case to get him out of here for good." Aaliyah nodded, but doubt gnawed at her. Derek, the hotel's ambitious manager, had been a shadow in her peripheral vision. His cold stares and subtle jabs, a constant reminder of her vulnerability. She wanted to believe Nathaniel could stop him, but she'd learned long ago that trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. Aaliyah kept Amara home from school the next day, claiming a stomach bug. She couldn't bear the thought of her daughter overhearing whispers about the article. They spent the morning baking cookies, and Amara's laughter was a brief reprieve from the chaos. But when Aaliyah checked her phone, she found a new blog post, which was even crueler than the last. It called her a scheming songstress and hinted at more shocking revelations. Her heart sank. She called Maya her best friend, who'd been her rock through every storm. Aaliyah said, "This is getting out of hand," pacing her tiny kitchen. "I can't keep performing like this, Maya. Not when they're tearing me apart." Maya's voice was fierce through the phone. "You listen to me, Aaliyah Jones. You're not some nobody they can push around. You're a star, and you've got Nathaniel in your corner. Don't let Derek or anyone else make you feel small." Aaliyah clung to Maya's words, but the fear was relentless. That evening, she forced herself to return to the Crescent Moon, her stomach in knots. The lounge was packed, but the atmosphere felt different, less warm, more scrutinizing. She overheard a patron murmur, "Is that her? The one from the article?" Her voice faltered during her first song, and she saw Nathaniel's concerned glance from his booth. After the set, she avoided the green room, slipping out a side door to catch her breath. The humid night air pressed against her skin, and she leaned against the wall, trying to steady her racing heart. That's when she saw Derek standing across the street, speaking to a woman with a camera. Their eyes met, and Derek's lips curled into a smirk before he turned away. Aaliyah's blood ran cold. She knew he was behind the leaks, but seeing him in action made it real. She wanted to confront him, to demand answers, but fear held her back. Instead, she called Nathaniel, her voice shaking. "I saw Derek with a reporter," she said. "He's not stopping, Nathaniel. He's trying to ruin me." Nathaniel was at her side in minutes, his face a mask of fury. "I'm handling it," he said, his voice tight. "I've got my team pulling records, emails, anything that ties him to this. He's not getting away with it." Aaliyah wanted to believe him, but the weight of the rumors was crushing her. "I need to step back," she said, her voice breaking. "I can't keep performing like this. I need to protect Amara." Nathaniel's eyes softened, but he didn't argue. "Take the time you need," he said. "But don't shut me out, Aaliyah. We're in this together." She nodded, but the city's vibrant pulse felt distant as she walked home. She was pulling away, not just from the stage, but from Nathaniel, from the dream she'd barely let herself imagine. At home, she tucked Amara in the little girl, clutching the book Nathaniel had given her about New Orleans jazz. Aaliyah's heart ached. She wanted to fight, but the cost felt too high. The next few days were a blur of canceled performances and restless nights. Aaliyah avoided the Crescent Moon, staying home with Amara and trying to shield her from the growing scandal. But the blog posts kept coming, each one more vicious than the last. Maya came over bringing takeout from their favorite po' boy shop and tried to lift Aaliyah's spirits. "You can't let them win," Maya said, her eyes fierce. "You're stronger than this." But Aaliyah wasn't sure she was. The rumors had taken root, and she felt their tendrils wrapping around her life, threatening to choke out everything she'd built. She missed Nathaniel, his steady presence, his belief in her, but she couldn't bring herself to call him. She was too afraid of what loving him might cost. The rusty note was a haven, its familiar creaky floors and smoky air, starkly contrasting the Crescent Moon's polished elegance. Aaliyah hadn't performed here since her rise to fame, but needed its comfort tonight. She'd told Nathaniel she was taking a break, but the pull of music was too strong. She needed to sing to reclaim the part of herself that no rumor could touch. The small crowd welcomed her like family, their applause warm and unjudging. As she sang "I'll Be Seeing You," her voice trembled with emotion, each note releasing the pain she'd been carrying. Nathaniel stood at the back, his presence a quiet promise. He'd respected her need for space, but hadn't stayed away. When the set ended, he approached, his eyes searching hers. "I've missed hearing you here," he said, his voice soft. "This is where it all started." Aaliyah's throat tightened. She wanted to keep her distance to protect herself, but his sincerity disarmed her. "I needed to come back," she admitted. "This place, it's home. No one here looks at me like I'm a headline." Nathaniel's jaw clenched. "I'm so sorry, Aaliyah. I should have stopped this sooner. I know it's Derek, and I'm close to proving it." She looked at him, her heart torn. "Why are you doing this, Nathaniel? You could walk away, let this all fade. Why fight for me?" He stepped closer, his voice steady. "Because you're worth fighting for. Because I've never felt this way about anyone. And because I'm not letting someone like Derek destroy what we could have." Tears welled in Aaliyah's eyes, and she let them fall. She told him everything. The poverty of her childhood, the desperation that led to her teenage mistake, the fear that she'd never be enough for his world. Nathaniel listened, his hand finding hers, his grip a lifeline. "None of that changes who you are," he said. "You're Aaliyah Jones, and you're extraordinary." He pulled her into his arms, and for the first time, Aaliyah let herself lean into him, tears soaking his shirt. The rusty notes' dim lights cast soft shadows around them, and for a moment, the world felt small, safe, just the two of them. But the world outside was far from safe. Derek's campaign was escalating. He'd found a new angle, a distant cousin of Aaliyah's who'd been in trouble with the law, a detail he twisted into a narrative of a troubled family. He fed it to the blogger, who published a scathing post titled, "The Truth About the Crescent Moon Star." The post hit the internet the next morning, and Aaliyah's phone buzzed with notifications. She read it in her kitchen, her hands shaking. Amara's laughter in the background is a painful contrast to the venom on her screen. She called Nathaniel, her voice breaking. "It's getting worse," she said. "They're bringing my family into this now. I can't keep doing this, Nathaniel. I'm done." "Don't say that," he said, his voice urgent. "I'm coming over. We're going to fix this." He arrived at her apartment, his face set with determination. Amara was coloring at the table, and Nathaniel greeted her with a smile, handing her a small toy trumpet. "For the future jazz star," he said, winking. Aaliyah watched, her heart aching with gratitude and fear. She wanted this, them a future, but the world seemed determined to tear it apart. Nathaniel sat with her, laying out his plan. He said, "My team has proof emails, texts, and payments linking Derek to the blogger. I'm going to confront him tomorrow, and I'm calling a press conference to set the record straight. But I need you there, Aaliyah. Please stand with me." She shook her head, her voice trembling. "I can't, Nathaniel. If I stand up there, it's admitting they've got something on me. It's letting them win. They've already lost," he said, his eyes fierce. "They're scared of you, Aaliyah, afraid of your talent, your strength. Don't let them make you small." His words echoed Maya's, and Aaliyah felt a spark of resolve. She looked at Amara, humming as she colored, and thought of the life she wanted for her daughter, one where she could be proud, fearless. "Okay," she said finally. "I'll do it. For Amara. For us." Nathaniel squeezed her hand, his smile a promise. "We're going to end this," he said. "Together." That night, Aaliyah lay awake, her mind racing. She thought of the stage, the music, the man who'd seen her when no one else did. She was terrified, but felt ready to fight for the first time, not just for her music, but for the love she was beginning to believe in. The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains of Aaliyah Jones's small apartment in the lower 9th Ward, casting delicate patterns on the worn wooden floor. Aaliyah, a Black American woman whose soulful jazz voice had captivated New Orleans, sat at her kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a chipped mug of coffee. Her 6-year-old daughter, Amara, was in the living room humming as she colored a picture of a saxophone player. The normalcy of the moment felt fragile, a thin veneer over the storm that had been building for weeks. The latest blow, a vicious blog post dragging her family into the scandal, had left Aaliyah reeling. The post, fueled by Derek the Crescent Moon Hotel's scheming manager, painted her as a product of a troubled lineage, twisting her cousin's past troubles into a narrative that threatened to unravel her life. Aaliyah's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it, her stomach twisting. Another notification, another cruel comment online. She'd stopped reading them, but their weight lingered, a constant reminder that her rise from the Rusty Notes' gritty stage to the Crescent Moon's polished lounge had made her a target. Nathaniel Brooks, the white American billionaire who owned the hotel, had vowed to fight for her to expose Derek's lies and clear her name. Last night, in the dim light of the Rusty Note, she'd agreed to stand with him at a press conference, a decision that felt both empowering and terrifying. Nathaniel arrived at her apartment just after breakfast, filling the small space with a quiet strength. He wore a simple button-down shirt, his sandy hair slightly tousled, and his blue eyes were fierce with determination. He told her, "We've got everything we need," spreading documents on the table, emails, texts, and even a recorded call, where Derek admits to leaking the stories. "He's done Aaliyah." She nodded her fingers, tracing the edge of Amara's drawing. "What if it's not enough?" she asked, her voice low. "What if they don't believe us?" "They will," Nathaniel said, his hand covering hers. "Because we're telling the truth. And because you're going to sing at that press conference, Aaliyah. You're going to show them who you are." The idea of performing in front of reporters, of baring her soul to a room full of skeptics, made her chest tighten. But she thought of Amara, of the life she wanted to build for her, and nodded. "Okay," she said. "Let's do this." Meanwhile, at the Crescent Moon, Derek was doubling down. He'd caught wind of Nathaniel's plan and knew his time was running out. A tall, wiry man, with a knack for manipulation, Derek had spent years resenting Nathaniel's effortless charm and success. Aaliyah was the perfect wedge to drive between Nathaniel and his empire, and Derek wasn't ready to let go. He met with his contact, a blogger named Vanessa, in a dimly lit cafe on Magazine Street. He said, "I need you to push harder," sliding a folder across the table. "This is about her teenage years, petty theft, hanging with the wrong crowd. Make it sound like she's been conning people her whole life." Vanessa raised an eyebrow, her pen tapping the folder. "This is thin, Derek. You sure you want to go there? If Brooks has proof you're behind this, you're toast." "He won't." Derek said, his smile cold. "By the time he figures it out, the damage will be done. She'll be gone, and he'll be too busy cleaning up the mess to notice me taking over." That afternoon, the blog post hit, and it was brutal. Titled, "The Crescent Moon's Siren, A History of Deceit." It rehashed Aaliyah's teenage mistake, stealing food to feed her family, and spun it into a tale of calculated ambition. It even suggested she'd used her daughter to gain sympathy. Aaliyah read it at home, her hands shaking, tears blurring her vision. Amara was at a friend's house, a small mercy, but the thought of her daughter seeing these lies made Aaliyah's heart ache. She called Maya, her best friend, who answered on the first ring. "I saw it," Maya said, her voice tight with anger. "This is bullshit, Aaliyah. You can't let this stop you," Aaliyah said. "I don't know if I can do the press conference," her voice breaking. "They're not just coming for me now, but for Amara." "Then you fight for her," Maya said. "You go out there and show them you're not what they say. Nathaniel's got your back, and so do I." Aaliyah hung up, her resolve wavering. She wanted to believe in Nathaniel and the love she felt growing between them, but the world seemed determined to tear it apart. When Nathaniel called to check in, she told him she was reconsidering. "I can't risk Amara," she said. "If I go out there, it's like admitting they've got something on me." Nathaniel's voice was steady through the phone. "You're not admitting anything, Aaliyah. You're showing them you're stronger than their lies. I need you with me tomorrow. Please." She agreed, but doubt gnawed at her. That night, she canceled her performance at the Crescent Moon, citing exhaustion. The lounge felt too exposed, too full of judgmental eyes. Instead, she stayed home singing softly to Amara as she tucked her in the little girl clutching the toy trumpet Nathaniel had given her. "Is Mr. Nathaniel coming tomorrow?" Amara asked, her eyes bright. Aaliyah forced a smile. "Maybe, baby. Get some sleep." The next morning, the press conference loomed like a storm cloud. Aaliyah dressed carefully, choosing a simple black dress that felt like armor. Nathaniel picked her up his presence, a quiet reassurance. At the hotel, the conference room was packed with reporters, their cameras and notebooks ready to dissect her. Nathaniel took the podium first, his voice calm but commanding. He said, "I'm here to set the record straight," his eyes sweeping the room. Aaliyah Jones is an extraordinary talent and an extraordinary woman. The stories you've read are lies orchestrated by someone within this hotel who wanted to undermine her and me. We have proof. He presented the evidence: emails, texts, and a recording of Derek admitting to the leaks. The reporters murmured their pens, scribbling furiously. But Aaliyah barely heard them. Her heart was pounding, her hands clammy as she stepped to the microphone. "I'm not here to defend my past," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. "I'm here to sing because that's who I am." She signaled the band, and they struck up "Ain't Got Nothing But the Blues." Her voice filled the room, raw and powerful, each note a defiance of the lies that had tried to break her. The reporters were silent, their skepticism giving way to awe. Nathaniel watched from the side, his eyes shining with pride. The room erupted in applause when she finished, but Aaliyah's relief was short-lived. Standing at the back, Derek slipped out his face, a mask of fury. He wasn't done yet, and Aaliyah knew it. The press conference had shifted the tide, but not without cost. Aaliyah's performance had silenced the room, her voice a testament to her truth. But the fallout was immediate. The local papers ran stories praising her courage, but online, the vitriol persisted, fueled by Derek's final gambit. Before his exposure, he'd leaked one last tale to Vanessa, claiming Aaliyah had fabricated her sob story to manipulate Nathaniel. The post, published just hours after the press conference, reignited the scandal, and Aaliyah felt the ground shift beneath her. She sat in her apartment scrolling through the comments, each one a dagger. Liar. Gold digger. She doesn't belong. Amara was at school, and Aaliyah was grateful for the quiet, but it also left her alone with her thoughts. She'd stood up at the press conference, bared her soul, but it wasn't enough. She wondered if it ever would be. Nathaniel called, his voice urgent. "I saw the new post," he said. "It's Derek's last shot, Aaliyah. He's been fired effective immediately. I've got security escorting him out as we speak." Aaliyah's relief was tempered by exhaustion. "Will it stop now?" she asked, her voice small. "It will," Nathaniel said. "I'm making sure of it. I would like you to come back to the Crescent Moon. The lounge isn't the same without you." Aaliyah hesitated. The stage had been her sanctuary, but now it felt like a battlefield. "I don't know, Nathaniel," she said. "I need time." "Take all the time you need," he said, his voice soft. "But don't give up on us. On you." She hung up, her heart heavy. Maya came over that evening, bringing a bottle of wine and her trademark bluntness. "You're not quitting," she said, pouring them each a glass. "You stood up there and showed the world who you are. Don't let some bitter asshole take that away." Aaliyah managed a small smile. "It's not just Derek," she said. "It's everything, the looks, the whispers, the feeling that I'll never be enough for his world. Maya set her glass down, her eyes fierce. His world, girl. You are his world. I've seen the way he looks at you. He's not going anywhere, and neither should you. The words stayed with Aaliyah as she prepared for bed. Amara's soft snores, a reminder of what she was fighting for. The next day, she took a step toward reclaiming her life. She called Nathaniel and agreed to return to the Crescent Moon for one performance, a test of her resolve. "I'm doing this for me," she told him. "Not for the crowd, not for you. For me." Nathaniel's voice was warm through the phone. "That's all I want, Aaliyah. For you to shine." The night of her return was electric. The lounge was packed, and the crowd was a mix of loyal fans and curious onlookers drawn by the scandal. Aaliyah stepped onto the stage, her burgundy dress catching the light, her heart pounding. She'd chosen "Feeling Good" for her opening number, its lyrics declaring her strength. As she sang, her voice soared, filling the room with a power that silenced every doubt. Nathaniel watched from his booth, Amara beside him, her eyes wide with pride. The performance was a triumph, the applause thunderous. Aaliyah felt the weight of the past weeks lift, if only for a moment. Backstage, Nathaniel found her, his smile radiant. "You did it," he said, pulling her into a hug. "You showed them all." Aaliyah leaned into him, her fear giving way to hope. "I'm trying," she said. "But I'm scared, Nathaniel, afraid of what comes next." He cupped her face, his eyes steady. "He said you, me, and Amara come next. We'll figure it out together." They left the hotel hand in hand, Amara skipping ahead with her toy trumpet. The city pulsed around them, its music a reminder of the life they were building. Derek was gone, his schemes exposed, but Aaliyah knew the world would always have its judgments. What mattered was that she chose to fight not just for her music, but for the love she was beginning to trust. As they walked along the river, the moon casting a silver glow over the water, Aaliyah felt a spark of something new, courage. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time she believed she could face it. The Mississippi River glittered under the late September sun, its lazy current reflecting the vibrant pulse of New Orleans. Aaliyah Jones stood on the levee, her dark curls catching the breeze, her heart lighter than it had been in weeks. The press conference and her triumphant return to the Crescent Moon's jazz lounge had shifted something in her. The vicious rumors orchestrated by the now disgraced Derek had been exposed, and though the sting of public scrutiny lingered, Aaliyah felt a newfound strength. As a Black American woman who'd clawed from the lower Ninth Ward to the city's grandest stage, she'd faced her fears and come out stronger. Her 6-year-old daughter, Amara, was her anchor, and Nathaniel Brooks, the white American billionaire who'd stood by her, was becoming something more, a partner, a possibility she was finally allowing herself to embrace. Today, Nathaniel had insisted on a break from the chaos. He'd said no stages or reporters over the phone, his voice warm with mischief. "Just you, me, and Amara. Let's have a day by the river." Aaliyah had hesitated. Her life rarely allowed for such carefree moments, but the thought of Amara's laughter and Nathaniel's steady presence was too tempting to resist. Now she watched Amara run ahead, her pigtails bouncing, a picnic basket swinging in her small hands. Nathaniel had planned everything: a blanket spread under a sprawling oak, a cooler filled with lemonade and sandwiches, and a portable speaker playing soft jazz. Ella Fitzgerald's smooth voice blending with the river's gentle lapping. Aaliyah wore a simple sundress, the yellow fabric bright against her skin, and for the first time in weeks, she felt unburdened, as if the city's humid air had lifted just for her. Nathaniel knelt beside Amara, helping her unpack the basket. His sandy hair glinted in the sunlight, and his rolled-up sleeves revealed tanned forearms, a reminder that he was more than the polished tycoon who owned the Crescent Moon Hotel. He was a man who loved New Orleans' soul, who'd fought for her when the world tried to tear her down. "Look, Amara," he said, holding up a sandwich cut into the shape of a star. "I made these special for you." Amara giggled, her eyes wide. "You're silly, Mr. Nathaniel," she said, grabbing the sandwich and taking a big bite. Aaliyah's heart swelled. Seeing Amara so at ease with Nathaniel so happy was a gift she hadn't expected. They spent the afternoon eating, laughing, and playing. Nathaniel taught Amara how to skip stones across the river, his patience endless as she flung pebbles that sank with a plop. Aaliyah joined in her competitive streak, emerging as she tried to outdo Nathaniel's perfect skims. "Not bad for a city girl," he teased, dodging a playful swat from her. As the sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow over the water, Nathaniel pulled Aaliyah aside, while Amara chased a butterfly nearby. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice low, his blue eyes searching hers. "This us you. Amara, it feels right. I want to build something real with you, Aaliyah. Not just at the hotel, not just on stage. A life." Her breath caught. She'd felt the pull between them growing, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real, terrifying and exhilarating. "Nathaniel," she said, her voice soft, "you know my life isn't simple. Amara, my past, the way people look at us. It's a lot." "I know," he said, taking her hand. "And I'm not pretending it's easy. But I'm all in, Aaliyah. For you, for Amara, for whatever comes next." She looked at him, really looked, and saw not just the billionaire who'd given her a stage, but the man who'd stood up to his own world to defend her. Her fingers tightened around his, and she nodded, a small smile breaking through. "Okay," she said. "Let's see where this goes." Nathaniel's face lit up, and he pulled her into a gentle embrace, his lips brushing her forehead. Amara ran back, tugging at their hands. "Are you hugging without me?" she demanded, and they laughed, pulling her into the circle. As the three stood there, the river flowing beside them, Aaliyah felt a spark of hope, a vision of a future she'd never dared to dream. But the world beyond the river wasn't done with them. Though Derek had been fired, his influence lingered. A few of his allies among the hotel staff whispered doubts, and a handful of online trolls kept the scandal alive, posting snide comments about Aaliyah's convenient redemption. She tried to ignore them, focusing on her performances and growing bond with Nathaniel, but the unease crept in. As she prepared for a show one evening, she overheard two servers gossiping in the lounge. "She's good, but come on," one said. "You don't go from the 9th Ward to Nathaniel Brooks without some game." Aaliyah's stomach twisted, but she pushed through her performance that night, fiercer than ever. She sang, "I'm beginning to see the light," her voice a defiant celebration of her resilience. As always, Nathaniel was a quiet strength there, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the battle wasn't over. After the show, she confided in Maya over a late-night call. "It's like they're waiting for me to fail." "Aaliyah," said her voice heavy, "I keep thinking I've won, but then I hear those whispers, and I'm right back where I started." "You're not where you started," Maya said, her tone fierce. "You're headlining at the Crescent Moon. You've got a man who's really into you, and Amara's happier than I've ever seen her. Don't let a few haters steal that." Aaliyah clung to Maya's words, but the doubt lingered. She wanted to believe in this new life in Nathaniel, but the scars of the past weeks ran deep. When Nathaniel invited her and Amara to dinner at his French Quarter townhouse, she hesitated, and then agreed, hoping a night away from the spotlight would ground her. The dinner was intimate, just the three of them in Nathaniel's cozy dining room, the walls lined with vintage jazz posters. He'd cooked gumbo, a recipe from his Creole grandmother, and the rich aroma filled the air. Amara chattered about her school art project, and Nathaniel listened with genuine interest, asking questions that made her beam. Aaliyah watched her heart softening. She wanted a family, a home, a place where she and Amara could belong. As they cleared the dishes, Nathaniel pulled Aaliyah aside, his expression serious. "I've been thinking about the future," he said. "Not just us, but the crescent moon. I want to start a program for young musicians, a place where they can learn and perform, and I was hoping you could help me run it." Aaliyah's eyes widened. "Me, Nathaniel? I'm just a singer." "You're more than that," he said, his voice firm. "You're an inspiration. You know what it's like to fight for your dreams. Those kids need someone like you." The idea sparked something in her, a purpose beyond the stage, a way to give back to the city that had shaped her. She nodded, a smile breaking through. "Let's do it," she said. "For them, for us." As they rejoined Amara, who was playing a tune on her toy trumpet, Aaliyah felt a weight lift. The whispers, the doubts the past were still there, but they were no longer her cage. She was building something new with Nathaniel and Amara, and for the first time, she believed it might last. The Crescent Moon's jazz lounge was alive with anticipation, the air thick with the scent of bourbon and the hum of conversation. Aaliyah Jones stood backstage, her heart racing, her fingers smoothing the folds of her emerald green gown. Tonight wasn't just another performance. It was a homecoming. After weeks of scandal, betrayal, and triumph, she was back where she belonged, her voice ready to reclaim the stage that had nearly been taken from her. The rumors fueled by Derek's vicious campaign had been silenced, and though the wounds lingered, Aaliyah felt stronger, buoyed by Nathaniel Brooks's unwavering support and fierce determination. The lounge was packed, every table filled with patrons who'd come to see the woman who'd defied the odds. Aaliyah's rise from the rusty note to the crescent moon had become a story of legend in New Orleans, and tonight she was proving it wasn't over. Nathaniel sat in his usual booth, Amara beside him, her eyes wide with excitement. He'd brought her as a surprise, knowing how much it meant to Aaliyah to have her daughter there. Amara clutched the toy trumpet he'd given her, her small hands tapping out a rhythm in time with the band's warm-up. Aaliyah took a deep breath, her nerves tingling. She'd chosen "This Is My Life" for her opening number, a bold declaration of her resilience. As the band struck up the first notes, she stepped into the spotlight, her voice rising with a power that silenced the room. Each note was a testament to her journey from the poverty of her childhood to the stage she now commanded. The audience leaned in, captivated, and Nathaniel's smile was a beacon, steady and proud. The set was electric, each song a chapter in her story. She sang "Ain't Nobody's Business," her voice dripping with defiance, and "What a Wonderful World," her tone soft and hopeful. Amara clapped wildly after each number, and Nathaniel's eyes never left Aaliyah, his pride palpable. When she closed with "Summertime," the song that first drew him to her at the rusty note, the room erupted in a standing ovation. Backstage, Nathaniel and Amara found her, Amara rushing into her arms. "You were so pretty, Mama," she said, her voice muffled against Aaliyah's dress. Nathaniel hugged them both, his touch warm and grounding. "You were unstoppable," he said, his voice low. "This is your stage, Aaliyah. No one can take it from you." She smiled, her heart full. "Thank you," she said, her eyes meeting his for everything. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Aaliyah's performances drew larger crowds, and the Crescent Moon became a cultural hub, its jazz lounge a must-visit for locals and tourists alike. With Aaliyah at the helm, Nathaniel's idea for a youth music program took shape. They scouted venues, planned workshops, and reached out to local schools, their shared vision bringing them closer. Aaliyah spent more time with Nathaniel, not just at the hotel, but in quiet moments, cooking dinner together, taking Amara to the park, dreaming about the future. But the past wasn't entirely gone. Though Derek was out of the picture, a few of his allies lingered, whispering doubts among the staff. Aaliyah caught occasional glances and heard murmured comments, but refused to let them dim her light. She was done hiding, done apologizing for who she was. Her music love for Nathaniel and bond with Amara were her truth, and she would protect them. One evening, as she prepared for a show, Nathaniel pulled her aside, his expression nervous. He said, "I've got something to show you," leading her to the hotel's garden, a hidden oasis of magnolias and fairy lights. The band was there playing a soft rendition of My Funny Valentine, and Amara stood nearby holding a small box. Aaliyah's heart skipped. "Nathaniel." "What is this?" she asked, her voice trembling. He took her hands, his eyes steady. "I've spent my life building things, hotels, businesses, but nothing means as much as what we're building together. You and Amara, you're my home. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." He knelt, opening the box to reveal a pearl ring, its luster glowing in the moonlight. "Aaliyah Jones, will you marry me?" Tears welled in her eyes, and she looked at Amara, who was excitedly bouncing. "Say yes, Mama," she squealed. Aaliyah laughed, her heart bursting. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Yes, Nathaniel." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and the band erupted joyfully. Amara ran to them, wrapping her arms around their legs, and the garden filled with applause from the small crowd of friends and staff who'd gathered. Aaliyah felt the weight of her past lift, replaced by a future she could finally believe in. As they danced under the stars, the music carrying them, Aaliyah knew this was just the beginning. The city, with its jazz and its heart, had brought them together, and she was ready to embrace whatever came next. The garden behind the Crescent Moon Hotel glowed under a canopy of stars, its magnolia trees draped with fairy lights that flickered like fireflies. Aaliyah Jones stood in the center, her heart racing, her emerald green gown catching the soft light. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and the soulful strains of a saxophone playing My Funny Valentine. Nathaniel Brooks, the white American billionaire who'd become her anchor, knelt before her, his blue eyes steady and full of love. In his hand was a small box, open to reveal a pearl ring that shimmered like the Mississippi River under moonlight. Amara, Aaliyah's 6-year-old daughter, stood nearby, clutching a bouquet of daisies, her eyes wide with excitement. "Aaliyah Jones." Nathaniel said, his voice low but clear. "You've brought music into my life in a way I never thought possible. You and Amara, you're my home, my heart. Will you marry me?" Aaliyah's breath caught tears welling in her eyes. As a Black American woman who'd fought her way from the lower Ninth Ward to the grand stage of the Crescent Moon, she'd faced countless battles, poverty, judgment, and a vicious smear campaign orchestrated by the hotel's former manager, Derek. Through it all, Nathaniel had stood by her, his belief in her talent and her heart unwavering. Now he offered her a future she'd barely dared to dream of. She looked at Amara, who was bouncing on her toes, barely containing her glee. "Say yes, Mama," she squealed, waving her daisies. Aaliyah laughed, the sound breaking through her tears. She turned back to Nathaniel, her heart full. "Yes," she said, her voice trembling with joy. "Yes, Nathaniel." The small crowd of friends and hotel staff gathered in the garden erupted in applause, the band shifting into a lively rendition of When the Saints Go Marching In. Nathaniel slipped the ring onto Aaliyah's finger, its pearl cool against her skin, and pulled her into his arms. Amara rushed forward, wrapping her small arms around their legs, and the three of them stood there, a family in the making, bathed in the glow of the city they loved. The moment felt like a dream, but Aaliyah's journey to this point had been anything but easy. Weeks ago, Derek's lies had nearly torn her apart, painting her as a gold digger using Nathaniel to climb from obscurity to fame. The scandal had dredged up her past, a childhood marked by poverty, a teenage mistake born of desperation, and twisted it into a narrative of deceit. Nathaniel's evidence presented at a press conference where Aaliyah had sung her truth had exposed Derek and led to his firing, but the whispers lingered. Even now, as she stood in Nathaniel's embrace, she could feel the weight of those judgments, the eyes of a world that wasn't always kind to a woman like her. But tonight, those doubts felt distant. The garden was alive with celebration. Maya, Aaliyah's best friend, raised a glass of champagne, her grin fierce and proud. The band played on their music, weaving through the night, and Aaliyah let herself surrender to the moment. She danced with Nathaniel, his hand warm in hers, his laughter a melody that matched hers. Amara twirled nearby her daisies, scattering petals, and Aaliyah felt a peace she hadn't known in years. As the night wore on, Nathaniel pulled her aside, leading her to a quiet corner of the garden, where the lights were dimmer, the music softer. I meant every word he said, his hands framing her face. I want to build a life with you, Aaliyah. Not just here, not just at the hotel. A real life with Amara, with music, with everything that makes you you. Aaliyah's throat tightened. I want that too, she said, her voice soft. But I'm scared, Nathaniel. I've spent so long protecting Amara and me. What if this world, your world, doesn't let us be? It's our world now, he said, his eyes fierce, and I'll fight for it every day if I have to. You're not alone anymore. She nodded, tears spilling over. I know, she whispered. And I'm all in too. They rejoined the party, Amara tugging them back to the dance floor. The night ended with laughter and promises, the city's pulse a backdrop to their joy. But as Aaliyah lay in bed later, Amara asleep beside her, the ring on her finger felt like a promise and a weight. She was ready to love Nathaniel and build a future with him, but knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The world that had judged her before was still waiting for her to stumble. The next few days were a whirlwind. Aaliyah returned to the Crescent Moon's jazz lounge, her performances infused with a new energy. The crowds grew larger, drawn by her talent and the story of her resilience. Nathaniel was there every night, Amara often by his side, her presence a reminder of the family they were becoming. Their envisioned youth music program took shape with Aaliyah, leading workshops for young musicians from neighborhoods like hers. She saw herself in their eyes, hungry, hopeful, afraid, and poured her heart into guiding them. But the whispers hadn't entirely faded. A few of Derek's former allies among the staff cast sidelong glances, and online a handful of trolls kept the old rumors alive, questioning Aaliyah's motives. She tried to ignore them, focusing on her music and her family, but the doubt crept in. She overheard a bartender muttering as she prepared for a show one evening. She got him wrapped around her finger. Wonder how long it'll last. Aaliyah's stomach twisted, but she pushed through her performance that night, a defiant roar. She sang I Won't Dance, her voice playful yet fierce, and the crowd loved it. Nathaniel met her backstage, his smile unwavering. You're unstoppable, he said, pulling her close. She leaned into him, but the bartender's words lingered. Later, she confided in Maya over coffee at their favorite diner. I keep waiting for it to feel real, Aaliyah said, stirring her coffee absently. Like I belong in his world. But every time I think I'm there, something pulls me back. Maya leaned forward, her eyes fierce. You belong anywhere you damn well please, Aaliyah. You're not just some girl from the 9th Ward anymore. You're a star and Nathaniel knows it. Don't let a few idiots make you forget that. Aaliyah nodded, clinging to Maya's words. She was ready to fight for this life, for Nathaniel, for Amara. But as she walked home, the city's vibrant pulse felt like a promise and a challenge. She was stepping into a new chapter and would need all her strength to face it. The French Quarter was alive with the spirit of New Orleans, its streets buzzing with music and celebration. Aaliyah Jones stood in a small room at the St. Louis Cathedral, her reflection glowing in a full-length mirror. Her wedding dress, a flowing gown of ivory lace with delicate beadwork, hugged her curves and cascaded to the floor, a perfect blend of elegance and Creole flair. Her dark curls were swept up, adorned with a pearl comb that matched the ring on her finger. Today, she would marry Nathaniel Brooks, the man who'd seen her through the darkest storms and loved her for every note of her soul. The past months had been a journey of growth and healing. Aaliyah's performances at the Crescent Moon had solidified her as a star, her voice a beacon for the city's jazz lovers. The youth music program she and Nathaniel had launched was thriving, with young musicians from across New Orleans finding their voices under her guidance. Amara, now a vibrant 7-year-old, was thriving too. Her days were filled with school art and the toy trumpet, and she played with surprising skill. Nathaniel had become a constant in their lives, his love for them unwavering, his presence a steady anchor. But the road to this day hadn't been without challenges. The whispers of doubt, remnants of Derek's smear campaign, had faded, but never entirely disappeared. Aaliyah still caught occasional glances from strangers, heard murmurs about her past, but she'd learned to hold her head high. She was Aaliyah Jones, a woman who'd risen from the lower Ninth Ward to claim her place in the world, and she would not be diminished. The cathedral's courtyard was transformed for the wedding, a celebration that embodied New Orleans' heart. The tables were draped in vibrant linens with magnolias and candles that flickered like stars. A brass band waited to lead the second line, their instruments gleaming in the sunlight. Aaliyah's heart swelled as she thought of the day ahead, a ceremony filled with love music and the city's unbreakable spirit. Amara burst into the room. Her flower girl was dressed in a miniature version of Aaliyah's, her basket of petals swinging wildly. "Mama, you look like a princess," she said, her eyes wide. Aaliyah knelt, pulling her daughter into a hug. "And you look like my little queen," she said, kissing Amara's forehead. Maya followed her maid of honor, dressed in a bold crimson that matched her fiery spirit. "You ready for this, girl?" Maya asked, her grin wide. Aaliyah nodded, her nerves giving way to excitement more than ready. The ceremony began as the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting a golden glow over the cathedral. Nathaniel stood at the altar, his navy suit tailored to perfection, his sandy hair catching the light. When Aaliyah appeared, walking down the aisle, to the soft strains of a solo trumpet playing, "What a Wonderful World," his eyes filled with tears. She was breathtaking, her smile radiant, her presence a melody that filled the space. Amara led the way, scattering petals with glee, and the guests, friends, family, and loyal Crescent Moon staff watched in awe. The officiant, a local pastor with a deep love for jazz, spoke of love as a song that required courage and harmony. Aaliyah and Nathaniel exchanged vows, their words profound but straightforward. "I promise to stand by you, Aaliyah," said, her voice steady, "to sing with you, fight for you, and always love you." Nathaniel's voice was thick with emotion. "I promise to be your home," he said, "to lift you, to share every note of this life with you and Amara." The cathedral erupted in cheers when they kissed, and the band struck a joyful tune. The second line began with the brass band leading the way through the French Quarter streets, Aaliyah and Nathaniel at the heart of the parade, and Amara dancing ahead with her basket. The city joined in, strangers clapping and swaying, and the music celebrating was love and resilience. The reception was held in the Crescent Moon's grand ballroom, its chandeliers sparkling, its tables laden with Creole delicacies, gumbo, crawfish, étouffée, beignets dusted with powdered sugar. Aaliyah took the stage, her voice rising in a new song she'd written for Nathaniel, a River of Us ballad. The lyrics spoke of their journey of storms weathered and love found, and as she sang, Nathaniel watched, his eyes shining with pride. Amara joined them for a dance, her small hands in theirs, and the guests cheered, the room alive with laughter and music. Maya gave a toast, her voice cracking with emotion. To Aaliyah and Nathaniel, she said, raising her glass to a love as strong as this city, as soulful as its music. As the night drew close, Aaliyah and Nathaniel slipped away to the hotel's garden, the same place where he'd proposed. The fairy lights still glowed, the air soft with the hum of a distant saxophone. They stood together, her head resting on his chest, his arms around her. "We did it," Aaliyah said, her voice soft. "We made it through." "We're just getting started," Nathaniel said, kissing her forehead. "You, me, Amara, this is our song now." Aaliyah smiled, the pearl ring catching the light. The city's pulse surrounded them, its music a promise of the life they would build. She was no longer just a singer from the Ninth Ward, no longer just a mother fighting for her daughter. She was Aaliyah Jones, loved whole and ready for whatever came next.